ことは何ですかと質問したとき、おばあさんはこのように答えたそうです。60歳の時にバイオリンをやりたいと思ったけれど、もう遅いと思ってやらなかった。あれから始めていれば30年も演奏でき。
And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the Jeff Mara Podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Dominic Morrow, who lived a life of crime, died, to hell and back, which we're going to learn about and more. Dominic, thank you for joining me and welcome.
All right, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the platform and your time.
Well, we appreciate you coming and sharing with us. And if you don't mind, let's just start on the day you got shot and go from there.
Sure. It was June 9th, 2009. I was in Chicago, and at that time, I was an active gang member, unfortunately, but fortunately, because it brought me to the Lord. But 2009, in June, I was with a friend, and, it's a highly populated area, so it's kind of very rare in the city to be able to see someone. I had a feeling that someone was following me. I went to a store. I saw this one gentleman. I just kind of something in my stomach didn't feel right. And I was just like how he was greeting me, and I greeted him. And I looked at my friend. I just said, let's shove it off. So about 30 minutes later, we went to another store because we were going to go do some shopping. And later on that night, we were going to go to the night.
Money and you don't even
so
know
get some outfits, go get something to eat. A routine. A lot of people do. Go get some new clothes for the club. And I saw him again coming out the second store. He was sitting on his car outside of the store. And that is pretty rare. That is very rare. The district I lived in, there's over 500,000 people in that district. So just to run across someone 2 times within 30 minutes in a place that is somewhere so distant, far away, that was kind of unusual. So I shoved it off, but I told my friend, I said, hey, there's that guy again. And then my friend said, hey, man, you're kind of paranoid. You're not that important. No one's following you. And he kind of laughed it off, but it's just something in my gut. So then we went to the clothing store. As I'm coming out, there he was again. I said, wait a minute, okay. Something is not. And then my friend started to take notice, like, okay, yeah, something is not right here, So we went back home, and as I come off the building, this is hours later, he's standing in front of my building. And as I said, okay, I'm going to go question this guy. Just to see if I know him from somewhere. This is kind of, he has to be following us at this point, or following me. So as I approached him, and I asked him, I said, he said, do you have a lighter? Because he had a cigar in his mouth. And I said, yeah, sure. And as I was digging in my pocket to hand him the lighter, all of a sudden, it was like a green flash. That's what I remember. It was a green flash. And then I smelled sulfur like matches. That's the best way I can explain it. Like a book of matches, if you would set a book of matches on fire, that smell. And I looked down, and he looked at me, and he had this evil grin on his face, and then that's when I noticed the gun. I guess I was in shell shock the first time he shot me. He shot me once, my lower abdomen area, and then he shot me again. And when I looked at him, he was just like, everything went in slow motion, but he just had this evil, like, I got you, look on his face. And it was the most evil look. But the second time when he shot me, as I'm falling back, I noticed the force of the bullet when it hit me. I was falling backwards. As I was falling backwards, I started to black out. But when I started blacking out, falling backwards, I immediately was falling forward. It's very hard to explain. I was literally laying on my back, but yet I was falling forward. Okay? The first thing I noticed was nothingness. Okay? It's the darkness that is so dark. It is so, the darkness, like I always explain, is a lie. It is gripping, and it's a terror that you can't explain here on this earth. There's nothing that can come close. Like I always try to say, like, if you could put blindfolds on, bury you, then put blindfolds on again, it still wouldn't match that darkness. It had a spiritual component to it. It was alive. It was thriving. But as I'm falling, it had to be faster than the speed of light. It was in a different dimension, but the speed at which I was falling was so fast. But I noticed as I was falling, okay, sometimes I get a little tied up because when I remember it, I can still feel the emotions behind it. But as I was falling, it felt like I was getting stripped away of everything good. Hope, love, laughter, joy, fellowship. Everything was getting stripped. The further and the faster I was falling, the more and more I felt naked, a spiritual nakedness. Okay? It was a vulnerability that you can't describe here on earth. Okay? It's a stripping of the soul and character and of attributes of yourself that no matter what you go through here on earth, it doesn't even come close. So as I'm falling and falling, I noticed it was a horrible smell. The stench of this smell, like I say, everything there is, because now that I realize in hindsight, I was in my spirit body. I was in the spirit form. But the smell, you can take anything here on earth, dead corpse, animals, anything, and put it all in one big, and it still would not get close to this horrible, horrible smell. And I want everyone to realize, in the spirit realm, you do not lose your five senses. You do not lose your taste, your sense of taste, smell, hearing, sight. Actually, they are heightened. Okay? They're magnified. So the smell, and as I'm falling and I'm smelling this, then I saw a little pin drop of light as I'm falling, and it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I noticed that this light, I heard voices, screams. When I say screams, you can feel it in your whole soul. You can feel it in your whole body. But the weirdest part about these screams, just say if you have a lot of noise playing at one time, or just say if you have a lot of music playing at one time, you can distinctively hear each individual scream simultaneously. And I know there would have to be millions, maybe billions of these screams and screams. But as I'm falling, it's like a portal opening. The light starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm looking, and it looks like an ancient cave system. But then I feel heat, undescribable heat as I'm falling. I mean, it's kind of hard to put in terms. That's why I try my best to use descriptive words that we kind of know, because the spirit world has a component to it that everything is magnified. Not only is it magnified, everything has vibrational feeling to it. Everything. It's a different fabric of existence. It's a different format. It's a whole completely different texture of existence. So as I'm falling, I'm hearing these screams. I smell the smells, and instantly I knew I'm going. This is hell. As I'm falling, because we here on earth, we always measure things in time. Time doesn't exist in the spiritual realm. It doesn't exist at all. There is no time. That's why I was wondering how I had all of this time, quote, may I say, to think all these thoughts simultaneously as I'm falling, probably faster than the speed of light, to be able to analyze all of these things. But like I say, your senses are heightened. Your awareness is definitely your sense. You know that you know that you know in the spirit body. There's nothing to hold you back from knowing anything, because time is usually the barrier to hold you back from knowing things here.
I think it gives him like a popular and convenient motive.
Portal is big, and I noticed there's rocks. There's like an ancient rock portal that I'm falling through, and the heat is so bad. But when I fall through it,
and he wasn't cut out for his spiritual lifestyle.
The sound.
And so he started experimenting with ayahuasca and psychedelic drugs.
Now as I hit, it was dark but it's still. But then all of a sudden I saw like pits, and the only way I can see is because the illumination of these pits were flaming. It was like just bursting like a little furnace pit. And then that's how I can see. But then what terrified me the most, okay, is the fact that as I'm laying there, the pits, when they were illuminating the space that I was in, I looked, you saw, thousands, as far as your eye can see, of these pits. And there were people in these pits, okay? Some of them were skeletal, some of them had flesh hanging off of them, and they were like in pools of lava. But when I really looked, there were these demons, creatures, reptile-looking things. Some of them were huge. Some of them, I would just guesstimate them to say 13 feet tall, 12 feet tall. Some of them were small. Some of them were like 3 feet tall. They were just so grotesque, and there were so many of them standing around the pits while people were trying to crawl out the pits. They were throwing them back in. They had like these rusty. Everything looks ancient there too, as far as the tools they were using. I'm gonna describe that soon enough. But they would try to get out, and they were kicking them in, and they were laughing and just throwing these people back in these pits. As far as I can see, and there's people screaming and yelling and horror, like it is undescribable. I wouldn't wish no one to even visit this place. But when I looked and analyzed and was looking at these demon creatures, I noticed a reptilian thing to them. They always, their eyes were red. Some of them eyes were yellow. They had the slits of a reptile. They had their hands were massive, especially the giant ones. The giant ones, they were the most intimidating. But even the smaller ones were more intimidating because I felt more of a hate. I always try to describe people that the hate that these demonic things, that these demonic beings have for us, it is so powerful. Just the hate alone. If that's how I know there's something holding it back. Even here on earth, when they harass us and terrorize us, there's got to be some kind of shield holding back that hatred, because just the vibration from the hate alone is so powerful. It is ancient, it's powerful, it is dark, it is gripping. They hate us. And hate is an understatement. That's just the closest word I can use to try to help people just kind of imagine and feel to get close to it. But as I'm laying, I can't get up. See, so we're so used to being in the physical body, I thought I was breathing. So when I tried to breathe, I couldn't breathe. It was it was hard. It was so hard because now, like I say, hindsight and looking back, the Lord has revealed a lot of things. I wasn't breathing at all. But we're so used to breathing subconsciously, just off response. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was breathing. It would just, and then it would just make me more panicked. Then I tried to get up and move, and my movement, it felt like I weighed at least 800, 900 pounds. My movement was so restricted. It was just hard for me to move. It was hard for me to even, and that was the least of my worries. I was just noticing that I can't move, I can't breathe. But as I'm looking around, okay, there is torture happening beyond, okay? And I learned too, there's many departments or compartments of hell. Okay, and when I looked, they were ripping people's mouths open and pouring lava down their throats. They were, and the thing that really is a supernatural element to it, because of those, because like I said before, some people had skeletal, just burnt skeletons, but some people had actual flesh on them. And when they would get ripped off, like I saw a demon one time, it was ripped off this old lady's arm. And she was screaming so much agony, and then her arm grew right back. It's hard to explain. It was rejuvenated. It came right back. And they were just doing it over and over, ripping off her apart, ripping her to shreds. And all of a sudden, her abdomen with no legs and no arms will start growing right back. And then they'll have other demons join in and do it all over again. It was just a repetitive thing of torture, nonstop. And I saw that kind of same theme all over, but it was so indescribable what they were doing to people. They have all kind of like I was saying, ancient. Everything looked rusty and old. Spears, like hooks, things with hooks on them with chains, and they would take people and they would put these hook things in people's mouths, and then they would rip their whole heads backwards. And you can still hear the person screaming. And then yet, when they would rip the flesh off and rip the people, I saw a lot of this. And then I started to notice. When I was looking at the people getting tortured, I instantaneously knew for sure why they were there, which sent them to hell, okay? Because we all sin on the spectrum.
Can you give us some examples
of the sins or why? Oh, yes, sure. Like, for example, for some reason, there was a lot of, I'm not trying to scare anyone, I'm just telling what I saw in my experience. I saw a lot of women there. Honestly, I saw a lot of women there more than men in my personal experience. Not saying that means anything. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm only speaking what God told me to speak and what I saw. And I'm going to tell the truth. I saw this one woman, for example, it was like a table. It was a wooden table. And they had people already on the table, but they had their tongues stapled and these big nails. And they were taking their tongues. And their tongues looked very elongated, a little longer than what you hear on earth. And they were hammering them into the table. And I knew instantly, those people who had their tongues, they were banging them to the table. And they were screaming and crying. It's like the noises, you can feel it. I can still remember, it's just horrifying. But they were banging their tongues into the table. And liars, gossiping. See, it corresponds. They were there for gossiping and lying. So it seems like in the spirit realm, with more of your sin is pronounced in your existence, your torture and punishment will correspond to your outstanding sin. That's the thing that I started to realize. Because like I said before, we all sin on a wide spectrum, but some people's sins, some specialize in lust, right? Some people lust more. Some people are addiction, right? Some people are murderers. It corresponds to the sin that really sticks out as your characteristic attribute at that point, okay? That makes sense? Okay, like for example, I saw people who drink alcohol. They were making them drink lava. The people who were drinking alcoholics were drinking lava. Literally, as soon as they drink it, they will melt. And then the demons would become with buckets and just pouring it. Some of them were just laughing so much, they would just pour the whole bucket of lava on them. And they would melt, and they were just like, and you can smell the flesh. I mean, that's the weirdest thing, because there's no flesh that exists there. But in the spirit realm, it seems like it replicates the flesh. It replicates, some people still have flesh on them. That is the weirdest part to me. The smell, everything. And that's why I want people to just be aware. It's not a fairy tale. Okay? I saw the sexual people who love lust, people who were like pastors, people, women who are promiscuous. Like I stated before, because I couldn't say it, I'm going to keep it as much as I can. I'm not going to go too far into detail, but I saw demons in this one woman, okay? And what they were doing to her, it is so grotesque. They were all ripping her at the same time, okay? And they were ripping her apart, ripping her. And all kind of things, that you can see the worst movie and just be like, that's nasty. But no, the stuff that they were doing to this lady and torturing her, and then they was drinking. They had a lot of ladies already, like they had them in line on these poles, these like wooden posts, just lined up, and they had snatched them off. One time, this lady, I saw the demon came and snatched her off. Part of her arm and stuff was still stuck and hanging on the pole. They just snatched her off, and it's like dungeons. Like I'm going to explain. In hell, there's different compartments. There's different tunnels. There's different parts of hell, and they have a lot of rooms. Or how to describe it, like tomb areas or like little cavern areas. And each cavern area has its own sets of tortures in these things, okay? I saw all types of torture, and then if you go further, like from the pits, on each side were these tombs, but on each side were the tombs, but in the middle were the pits, where all the lava and the people were in the pits. Now, if you were to go to the sides, into one of these, you can just observe the tortures in each room. And in each of those rooms, they had many people waiting, like it was their turn. But while they was waiting their turn, I didn't even mention the insects yet that were there, that were crawling all over the place. And you couldn't see them at first. I couldn't see them at first because the light, every so often, you can see. That's the last thing I was thinking about, was looking down. But when I did, because I felt my legs getting bit up, and it was these worms. These things were so thick, like a soda can thickness. Okay, they were maggots, but they were thick. But then they would go in, and some of them were smaller, but the smaller ones would go inside you. Okay, they were inside my legs, and they would eat my legs from the inside out. Okay, and when I say like the pain, and when I'm thinking about too, and I praise the Lord that He had to minimize my pain, because there is no way I didn't feel the full thrust of it. That's impossible, because the way they were coming in and out of my legs, and they reached up to my knees, it was just full of worms. It just all of a sudden just came. Then I felt a gripping hand on my head. One of the demons grabbed me and he threw me so far. These things are strong, by the way. These things are, it's got to be a supernatural, obviously it's supernatural, but these things are we wouldn't be able to fight them if we tried. I'm just telling you right now, there's nothing we can do to these things, okay? Well, as he flung me, he flew, and as I flew, I was by one of the tombs, and that's what I saw. These things, like I saw a lot of pastors. That was the scariest part to me, because even when I was out in the streets doing my criminal life, I always looked up to pastors somewhat to say, okay, these guys are set apart. They live a clean life. You would think so. Priests pastors, deacons. There were a lot of them. And they were still dressed in their suits. They still look, just like you have on a shirt and tie. They still look very professional and a lot of them were in lines, just in rows, just waiting. Like a lot of people here are just waiting for their torture. Okay? And a lot of these pastors do not understand that when you follow a decree with the Lord, you have a lot of people and souls in your life that really look up to you and follow you. You have to really obey that as much as possible because you're held to a higher standard. And also in hell, you get tortured the worst. Okay? Because you were once the biggest opposition that maybe saved some lives that took them away from hell. So if you end up messing up and you get there yourself, the torture they have for them, unbelievable. Unbelievable. The things that I saw when they were stripping them off, they were messing with their genitalia, they were cutting off. I mean, it is very grotesque what they were doing. They were taking spears and putting them up, the backside through the spears. It was kind of like when I did some research, and I didn't even know they used to do this. I forgot what ancient civilization. I think his name was Dracula. The real Dracula. We used to take his enemies. He'd take the spear and put it under the area and put it through and put his enemies like on a stick, like a shish kebab, like pretty much. They were making them into human shish kebabs and putting like 3 or 4 pastors on a pole on a stick and putting them in hell and parading them through hell. Like it's just like I saw this one time, this one pastor, people were just dancing, laughing around him, putting spears inside. Like it is just beyond comprehension. It is beyond comprehension. And the thing is, after a while, when I'm seeing all the tortures, and I knew that the Lord had to be with me because every time I'm beyond terrified of one part, I'm to another part, and I feel that same. It's a suction. It's like He was moving me to see another part, and then another part. But I went to this one, like I described before.